So we'll give everyone another minute or two. There's still some folks popping in, and we will then get started and be respectful of your time to get you in and out of here in an hour. You are muted on arrival, so we will take questions at the end where you'll be able to unmute. And I would suggest as we go, take some notes, but I'll also make this available for you all. So feel free to request it after the class. I'm happy to share it. So take notes if you want. If any questions pop up, hang on to them for the end and we'll go through them. I may answer it along the way, and we'll get started. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we will begin in a minute. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Again, welcome. I appreciate you all signing up and joining us this morning. We're going to be talking about buying real estate with cryptocurrency. So what we're going to talk about this morning isn't just going to be about cryptocurrency. So I'm going to give you all some background on the history of what makes this different than, say, going to the bank or using traditional funds that come from a traditional lender, that sort of thing. So I'm going to give you some background in the technology. I want to give you enough to be able to understand it in conversation, but not necessarily. I don't want to get too deep with the technology too quickly. I don't want to overwhelm anyone, but I do think it's important. We do have an hour to kill for the CE credit, so I'm going to give you some background because I think it's helpful to understand what's going on. For those that don't know, I'm Chris with World Class Title, co-owner here, and so I've been in blockchain and cryptocurrency back since around 2016 or so. That's when myself and two other guys started a company called Safe Chain, and we were using blockchain technology to make title transfers at the county and recorder offices more secure. We were also using different types of technology to create a product called SafeWire to help prevent real estate related wire fraud. So I've been in this space for a while. I'll share my experience of what I think is happening, can happen, and what I don't see as being very realistic in any of our lifetimes. So we're going to begin today talking about blockchain. So probably most of you, I would imagine, the most common thing you are familiar with is something called Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is a form of cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency uses technology called blockchain to exist. So without blockchain, there is no cryptocurrency. Without blockchain, there isn't a lot of things that, a lot of technologies that are being built. You can think of like blockchain as the rails of the technology. So it's what things like cryptocurrency and other types of uses involving blockchain. Blockchain is the underlying technology that powers the processes. So it's the rails is what you would call it. So back in 2016, Goldman Sachs came out with an article that said that blockchain has the potential, could disrupt everything. I don't think that's happening in our lifetimes, but we're gonna share why that potential is there. And I have a video that's going to give a little bit more of an outline of what exactly blockchain does.
When you vote, have you ever wondered whether your ballot is actually counted? If you meet someone online, how do you know they're who they say they are? When you buy coffee that's labeled fair trade, what makes you so certain of its origin? To be sure, really sure about any of those questions, you'd need a system where records could be stored, facts could be verified by anyone, and security is guaranteed. That way, no one could cheat the system by editing records because everyone using the system would be watching. Systems like this are on the horizon, and the software that powers them is called a blockchain. Blockchains store information across a network of personal computers, making them not just decentralized, but distributed. This means no central company or person owns the system, yet everyone can use it and help run it. This is important because it means it's difficult for any one person to take down the network or corrupt it. The people who run the system use their computer to hold bundles of records submitted by others, known as blocks, in a chronological chain. The blockchain uses a form of math called cryptography to ensure that records can't be counterfeited or changed by anyone else. You've probably heard of the blockchain's first killer app, a form of digital cash called Bitcoin that you can send to anyone, even a complete stranger. Bitcoin is different from credit cards, PayPal, or other ways to send money because there isn't a bank or financial middleman involved. Instead, people from all over the world help move the digital money by validating others' Bitcoin transactions with their personal computers, earning a small fee in the process. Bitcoin uses the blockchain by tracking records of ownership over this digital cash, so only one person can be the owner at a time and the cash can't be spent twice, like counterfeit money in the physical world can. But Bitcoin is just the beginning for blockchains. In the future, blockchains that manage and verify online data could enable us to launch companies that are entirely run by algorithms, making self-driving cars safer, help us protect our online identities, and even track the billions of devices on the Internet of Things. These innovations will change our lives forever, and it's all just beginning.
So a lot of potential what could happen with this technology. And we're going to talk about, we'll talk some more about why that is. So to go all the way back, in 2007, during the financial crisis, there was a white paper that was written by a person or persons named Satoshi Nakamoto. No one knows who Satoshi Nakamoto is. There are some folks who speculate, and they don't know necessarily if it's an individual person or if it's a group of people that have come together and have used this this name to work under. But the name, I personally think the person is Elon Musk, but I'm just speculating. When they started PayPal, which he was a co-founder of, they started PayPal in order to create a digital currency. And he's written white papers before where he's given the technology away. And just this morning, before I came into the office, I saw a tweet that he had posted where he spells out where the name Satoshi Nakamoto actually comes from. It's an anagram, which is kind of wild. He's denied it, but whoever this person or persons is owns over 1 million Bitcoin. That's currently trading at about $40,000 a Bitcoin. So I think that he's going to use this as a way to fund things to Mars. But again, that's just a personal opinion. No one has come out and actually claimed it. And one of the reasons I think that they have done this is a couple of reasons. But one of the big reasons is you could imagine the target on someone's back if they came out and decided that they wanted to create a global currency. The types of organizations that could disrupt would be large governments that print money. So like the US or China or any large or any country that prints what's called fiat money or currency, you would suspect that they would not be too happy with someone trying to supersede that with a global currency that's digital and seamless and doesn't require a nationality. So again, that's a speculation. There's another short video that does a nice job of explaining, again, some background of what blockchain is and how it works. What I like about this video is they take it from explaining it to a young child, to a teenager, to an adult, to a college student, to and on and on. I won't play the whole thing, but it is available on YouTube, and I think the beginning of it is worth
My name is Bettina Warburg. I'm a researcher of transformative technologies and co-founder of Animal Ventures. Today, I've been challenged to explain one concept at 5 levels of increasing complexity. My topic is blockchain technology. Blockchain is a new network, and it's going to help us decentralize trade, allowing us to do a lot of our transactions much more peer-to-peer directly and lower our use of intermediaries like companies or banks maybe. I think today everyone can leave understanding something about blockchain at some level. Do you know what we're going to talk about today? It's called blockchain.
What's blockchain?
That's a really good question. It's actually a way that we can trade. Do you know what trade is?
It's when you take turns in time. It's when you give up most of what you want, right?
When you give up most of what you want? Well, sometimes that definitely happens for sure. What if I told you that there's a kind of technology that I work on that means you could trade with any kid all over the world?
Really?
Yeah.
If I could trade with any kid, I would trade. Well, I would trade something I don't like so much.
That's probably a good idea. Maybe somebody else likes it more than you do. So normally when people trade, they have to go to the store or they have to know the person so that they can get what they asked for. With blockchain, you can make that exact same trade, but you don't need the store and you don't even necessarily need to know the other person. So Ian, do you know what blockchain is?
No.
Have you ever traded or sold anything?
Actually, I'm selling my computer on eBay right now.
That's amazing. What made you decide to trade on eBay?
Well, I mean, I've heard of it and I trust it a lot because they have like all of their guarantees. So I know that I'm gonna get money and the person's gonna get what they want.
So what if I told you that blockchain technology is basically a tool where you can do the exact same thing, but it goes to you and I directly. You wouldn't need an eBay or a brand in between.
That's cool.
And there's a lot of those kinds of middlemen in our society today, right? We have a lot of banks, we have a lot of companies that sort of help us make sure that our trades happen. But if we could guarantee the same trade using technology as sort of like a technological trust, then we wouldn't really need all those middlemen in between.
So how does it work?
It's basically a network of computers that all have the same history of transactions. And so instead of sort of there being one company with one database that holds all the information, the same sort of list is held by all these different people. Like you could have it on your computer, and then it gets validated by everyone. And basically that turns into the next part of the list. So it's sort of constantly updating itself.
So like, how do you make sure that it's secure?
So it uses cryptography, and that helps it basically encode all of the transactions. So you can't really see exactly what happened, but you know it happened because it's like a marker.
So you could kind of like, I don't know, say you trade apples, but you would just see like random letters for it. So you wouldn't be able to like track it, I guess.
Exactly.
That's cool.
So it's kind of this like really big ledger or accounting system for all sorts of things that get traded, but instead of being owned by one company, it's owned by everybody.
That's cool.
Yeah. We're going to talk about blockchain.
So I'm going to stop it there at college student. The video is about 17, 18 minutes long. If you want to check it out, it is on YouTube, and it's worth a listen. It does get a bit more complex as it goes. And I don't want to go too far in the weeds. I just, as I said before, I think getting a general understanding of the technology that's underlying all of this stuff that's coming, how it works in a general sense is helpful. And we have an hour to kill. So, so the most popular kind of proof of work with this technology, blockchain, is something called Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the largest market share of cryptocurrency that's out there, and it's basically a digital store of value. So it's something that there's an agreement between tons of people that say this Bitcoin is worth X amount of dollars today, and we're going to use that as a form of value that we can exchange whatever types of asset we want to exchange. So in the past, if I wanted to send you money, or currently, not necessarily in the past, if I want to send you money, I can go and I can go on Venmo, and I can just go use Venmo, and I can click on send $20 to whoever, and you're on Venmo, we receive that, we both are there, everybody's happy, it goes from my bank account into your bank account. And for all intents and purposes, it works, right? So where the opportunity with the technology like a blockchain, with that, what it does is with Venmo, Venmo is a product that's owned by PayPal. PayPal has to connect with my bank account. My bank, in some way, shape, or form, is going to make money in that transaction at some point in time. Banks make a lot of money in all sorts of transactions. So does PayPal, so does even Venmo, even though I'm not necessarily being charged on that $20 transaction. So I send that transaction through Venmo, which is actually PayPal, send it from my bank account to your bank account. So there's a lot of intermediaries, even though the process in and of itself is fairly simple nowadays through an app. There are still a lot of intermediaries that, that are involved in these transactions. If I own cryptocurrency like a Bitcoin, I can basically take a code and send my $20 in Bitcoin to a code that's provided from your what's called a wallet. And there's no back and forth with banks. There's no back and forth with these third parties. The money goes from the my Bitcoin wallet to your Bitcoin wallet, end of transaction. And the system, the network, all verify that I no longer have that $20. It's now in your wallet as a in the form of Bitcoin. One of the things that this technology does is it eliminates something called a double spend. So for a long time, the problem with doing something like this was, how do you actually prove that that $20 I just sent, I no longer have it? So it's really important that we have some type of network that can be out there verifying and validating that that transaction actually occurred, and all the parties agreed that that was legitimate. So for example, if I send you an email and that email has an attachment, in that email, a PDF attachment, and you open it up and you save it on your computer, there's now 2 copies of that same document, that same PDF. So we can't do that with money. Like, I can't send you $1 and now all of a sudden I still have my dollar and you have a new dollar. That doesn't work. So one of the things blockchain does is it allows me to take some of my cryptocurrency, whether it's Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever example of cryptocurrency you want to use, and take it from my account to you, and I no longer have that currency digitally. That's one of the problems that was solved by using blockchain, and it's something that cryptographers had battled with for a long, long time. As was mentioned, peer-to-peer transactions, so essentially no middlemen. You can see the value to something like this, where there are a lot of middlemen in just about everything that we do. So having some of those internal layers removed can increase efficiency and also increase security. There's also anonymity involved. And so authenticating digitally that I am who I say I am and you are who you say you are, but still having a layer of anonymity in our transaction is also important. There are examples of this type of thing being used illegally. So to say buy drugs, for example, my counter argument to that sort of thing is that cash is also used to buy a lot of drugs as well. So cash maybe isn't as easy and sometimes as this, but anonymity. And we're also seeing it now with a lot of we're seeing in the news around sanctions and countries, specifically in Russia, they're moving towards cryptocurrency as a way to bypass some of this. And it will probably work. It will probably work. And I think we could go back and forth all day long whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know. I think at the end of the day, though, the technology, works. So it's decentralized. Again, no central government necessary. So the US dollar is something called a fiat currency. It's a currency that's basically printed by the United States government. And as we've seen, the government can decide to print as much or as little as they want, right? And it has some potentially effects on things like inflation and then what we're dealing with now. With this sort of thing, with no central government necessary, Bitcoin has actually, part of the initial setup of Bitcoin was they put these rules in place with the technology that there was a limited supply of Bitcoin that would actually be minted and produced over the lifetime of Bitcoin. And once it got to the end of its lifetime, it would stop creating new Bitcoin. And I think the end of the lifetime is within the next 10 years. And I think there's a total of something like, don't hold me to this number, but I think it's in the millions of Bitcoin that are being produced all over the lifespan of that currency. So there will be a limited supply of how many are actually going to be produced. In every few years, they produce half of what they produced the prior few years, and on and on. So that's something that helps with keeping the demand high. So when miners, so this network that's created that says Chris no longer has that $20 of Bitcoin, now it's over in Jim's account. Jim now has it. It's a group of miners, it's a group of computers networked all around the country, or I'm sorry, all around the globe, that get paid every time they successfully demonstrate that that transaction occurred. So these miners are working to prove that these transactions happened, and the rest of the network then verifies and agrees that that yes, that transaction did happen, and then it's secured forever on a blockchain that said that transaction happened. So we're moving into a space where everything essentially is becoming a digital asset. Right now, real estate specifically is what I would call an analog asset. I mean, we're still in a lot of cases, and especially at the counties, we're using paper records in a lot of cases to file things and do things. That's all analog technology, like a cassette tape player. But things are moving to become digital assets. And that's one of the things you're seeing right now with technologies like NFTs, which we'll talk a little bit about towards later here. But what you're seeing is you're seeing the digitization of analog and hard assets. That trend is not going to stop. I think that the idea of digitizing homes and home records is very, very difficult. It's very nuanced. It's very complicated. Technologists often overestimate what it is they can do in real estate transactions. And I think as real estate professionals, we often underestimate what technology can do to assist and make our lives more efficient, make transactions more efficient. At the end of the day, as someone that's had firsthand experience in working with county recorder offices and trying to improve in technology, specifically with blockchain, it's a very, 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 very heavy lift. And I'm not convinced that unless somebody like a Google or Microsoft come in and take on that type of initiative, that it's going to happen anytime soon. So, but that's definitely where the trend is going. And you can see it where you're seeing more and more retailers accepting Bitcoin as payment, as currency, online retailers. I just read the other day that eBay is going to start accepting cryptocurrency as payment. And so this is the trend. This is where things are going, digitization of everything. So in 2010, if you had the entire market of Bitcoin, it was worth $1.4 million. If you owned every single Bitcoin that existed in 2010, it was $1.4 million. In 2020, that number was $160 billion. In 2022, as of a few days ago, that number is $826 billion if you owned every single Bitcoin that existed on the planet. So in 12 years, we went from a market cap of 1.4 million with an M to 826 billion with a B of just Bitcoin. So approaching $1 trillion market cap in 12 years of a digital currency. So the idea that this is going away, I just don't think is realistic. So what we have to look at is, okay, if it's not going away and it's becoming something that is becoming more and more prevalent, how can I leverage it in my business with my clients? How can I become somewhat of a knowledge base how this could be used within real estate transactions, because there are ways. So in 2010, $5 worth of Bitcoin today would be worth around $80 million. So $5 worth of Bitcoin in 2010, it was about 2,000 Bitcoins at that time, would be about $80 million today at around approximately $40,000 per coin, which is around the going rate. Pretty wild. If you measured it in size of countries, Bitcoin is the 14th largest, would be at number 14. And if you measured it in size of financial value of countries and their currencies, Bitcoin is number 14. China's 1, US is 2. Next is cryptocurrency market share. So if you look, Bitcoin has 43% market share of all cryptocurrencies. Ethereum is number 2, which we'll talk about the differences, and then you see the rest. So by far, Bitcoin is as what most folks consider the gold standard. Doesn't mean it's the best in every situation or every circumstance, and I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying from a pure market cap, market share, they're by far the largest coin out there. When you think about this in terms of, this is actually the slide that kind of the light bulb went off in my head when I saw this a few years ago, where if you look at all money, it's around, if you took all the money, what we consider money in the world, it's around 83, it's probably closer to about $90 trillion around the globe, right? And so cryptocurrency right now is about 1 trillion of that. And so we have to think, do I believe that that is going to continue to grow, or do I think that that's going to go away? And my belief is that number is only going to go up. Cryptocurrency, and specifically when we're talking about things like Bitcoin and other currencies, they make transacting easier. So what that means is they reduce friction in transactions, regardless of what type of transaction, by removing third parties, banks, governments, and allowing people to transact no matter where they're located throughout the globe. That makes things easier, right? And so if it's easier to transact, what it means is that we're going to do more transactions. So it's going to grow the global economy by making it easier to transact. Me sitting here in Columbus, Ohio, with someone that's sitting in Europe or sitting in Asia or sitting wherever, right? So the ability to transact easier allows us to do more, which grows, makes things larger, expands economies. So I think that the reality is that this will continue, these trends will continue, because it's safer, faster, easier. It will mean that the economy will expand across the globe, is the hope, and it should mean more transactions overall. And that's generally, I think, a good thing. This is just an evolution of money. So back in the day, when we first were creating communities, we had barter systems. So I would chop wood for you if you cooked the deer that the other guy hunted, right? So we would barter with each other. And then we had different types of ledgers, and we used physical objects like clamshells. And then we went into coins and gold, paper. We moved into online banking and different types of digital money. Now we're moving into another form of a money evolution, decentralized digital money. So this is just another evolution in how things, what we consider stored value. So we've talked a lot about Bitcoin. I'm going to talk next about something called Ethereum. So in 2013, there was this young dude from Russia who was living in Canada at the time, but originally he was born in Russia. His name is Vitalik Buterin. He's as close to an alien, I think, as we'll see. he's just so brilliant. It's like has a stream of conscious that's coming from another planet. But he came up with this idea of blockchain, using blockchain technology to create a network called Ethereum. Ethereum's the #2 largest network. This is him back in 2017. And then I'm going to let him talk a little bit about what they're doing with the Ethereum network, what they built, and I'll, on the other side of that, kind of break it down in a general way.
Thanks to the power of modern communication, we have the ability to create technologies that are decentralized, removing middlemen and allowing users to interact with each other directly through a global network. Decentralized applications have been becoming more and more important in the past 10 years and have the benefits of massively reducing costs and barriers to entry, removing single points of failure, preventing censorship, and ensuring transparency and trust between all the parties involved in an interaction. BitTorrent, a file sharing network developed in the early 2000s, is arguably the first decentralized application to have been created. BitTorrent allows anyone to share any kind of file with anyone else in the world, allowing people to distribute content quickly and easily, even if they do not have the resources to pay for their own website or server. 5 years later, Satoshi Nakamoto came up with the idea of a blockchain, a sort of distributed database, and used it to build Bitcoin, the world's first decentralized currency. Decentralized currencies like Bitcoin allow people to send money instantly anywhere around the world with no regard for national borders with negligible fees. Bitcoin is increasingly being used for international remittances, micropayments, and commerce online. Decentralized applications for finance, cloud computing, messaging, and distributed governance are soon to come. Ethereum is a platform that is specifically designed for people to build these kinds of decentralized applications, or dApps for short. The Ethereum client, which we are calling the Ether browser, will include a built-in peer-to-peer network for sending messages, and a generalized blockchain with a built-in programming language, allowing people to use the blockchain for any kind of decentralized application that they want to create. Ethereum can be used to build financial applications that are fully trustworthy and transparent because they run on the blockchain. Online, cryptographically secure systems for managing your property and contracts, social networking and messaging systems that allow users to maintain control of their own data, systems for trading underutilized computational resources like CPU time and hard drive space, and eventually tools for online voting and distributed governance. And the most exciting applications of Ethereum are probably the ones that we have not even thought of.
So, you know, really smart, obviously smart, talented dude. Essentially what he's saying and what you're seeing with things like NFTs that are built on Ethereum are like, so Bitcoin is really just a stored value of it's a stored value that we can use to exchange for buying things, doing things, but it's a fairly basic as far as its functionality. What he's talking about, what he's built with Ethereum, is that using blockchain, you can create all types of applications that sit on top of that blockchain that are decentralized in nature. So you could, like what's happening, NFT is probably the best example that folks are talking about the most right now, but those are called smart contracts. So smart contracts, I think, I really love the idea of smart contracts for real estate transactions. Smart contracts can actually be digital. They're actually digital contracts, digital software that's written that could be connected to bank accounts, that could be connected to all kinds of self-executable logic built into it. So like, for example, I'm going to buy a house and go into contract on a house. As soon as we decide that that purchase contract is executed, we agree that the contract is actually going to go and pull the earnest money deposit out of my bank account and send it to whatever bank account that it needs to get sent to, whether it's tied to a title company or whatever. So the contract can actually do the legwork that most of us do. So you can actually write that into these Ethereum-based smart contracts, which is kind of cool. I think that there's potential there from a contract standpoint, and probably a lot of potential there from in a real estate space that I haven't thought of. But smart contracts are pretty neat. So it's all code, right? So it's all code that you can access through a web browser, and it's built on Ethereum. It's used a coding language called Solidity. It looks something like this, but basically you could take the things that we do within purchase contracts and you could write it up in a coding language that actually, when things get executed, like the contract, certain things automatically happen. They happen through the technology, which is kind of neat. So the most common example of some of the stuff that's happening right now on the Ethereum network are these NFTs, or non-fungible tokens. So I'll share a short clip on what exactly that is and what that means.
So I'm going to describe what an NFT is in the most basic terms I can. NFT stands for non-fungible token. Fungible means something is able to be exchanged or substituted and will hold the same value. It's interchangeable, like the dollar, gold, casino chips, Bitcoin, Ethereum, or frequent flyer loyalty points. If I lend you $10 cash and you return to me 2 $5 banknotes, I'm fine with that because even though they are different, they hold the same total value. They're fungible. So non-fungible obviously means it's an asset that can't be substituted. It has unique attributes that make it different from something else in the same asset class, like a painting, a theatre ticket, a house, a video game skin, a trademark, or a crypto kitty, which was the first real use case to take off on the Ethereum blockchain in 2017. Some of these assets are physical and tangible, and others are digital and intangible. So NFTs are non-fungible tokens. Token refers to a digital certificate stored on a secure distributed database called a blockchain. So NFTs are digital assets, publicly verifiable intellectual property authenticated on a blockchain. A popular place to currently browse a variety of NFTs is on OpenSea.io. It's an exciting space. I believe the NFT space will continue to grow in the coming years, with some popular use cases being digital art, virtual land, gaming, collectibles, finance, and much more. I thought this was worth explaining because I think we'll be talking a lot more about this in the coming weeks.
So, there's a lot of hype right now with NFTs, and there's a lot of speculation, I would say, is probably the best word to use. And whenever there's a lot of speculation, there's typically a bubble that eventually will burst, and there will be folks that will lose a lot of money. And I think that is likely to happen, what's happening right now. But it doesn't mean that the technology isn't here to impact how we transact. For example, when the internet bubble back in 2000 happened, there was a lot of craziness and speculation that was going on at the time. But on the other side of that bubble, what came out of that were companies like Amazon, companies that, that came out the other side and have stuck around, not only stuck around, but have figured out how to thrive. So I think we're going to see a similar thing with NFTs. I think the bubble will burst at some point. I don't know when. I'm not here to predict it. I don't speculate in it, but if you can make money in it, great. Just be careful not getting holding the bag at the end. The technology, though, what we're seeing is that they're proving that there's an impact here and a potential here with what the technology is able to do. And I think that's the exciting part, and we'll see it on the other end, what comes out of it and what potential impact it does or doesn't have in real estate. I had someone ask me yesterday, about a company called Proppy that does a lot in this space with blockchain and real estate, and now have jumped on the NFT train. And what I communicated to him was that Proppy is a marketing company. So they talk a lot about, blockchain and crypto and this and that, but they don't build anything. So be careful with the hype. They're hype chasers, they're marketers, they're not a technology company, regardless of what they tell people. So So, what impact will this have on real estate? The short answer is we don't know. I think that, again, technologists look at real estate and they think that what a lot of us do is easy, and they don't understand the nuance. And they don't understand at the end of the day that the consumer wants a trusted real estate professional in what they do. They just don't necessarily want everything else. And so I think the opportunity in things like this is figuring out, how do we use technology as an industry to carve away the everything else that the consumer doesn't want? We know they want us, we know they want trusted professionals. What they don't want is the everything else. And so that's the question. How do we carve away the everything else? I believe that we are seeing a digitization of everything, and that will include homes. Does that happen in the next 5-10 years? I don't know. There are aspects of it that I think do, but we'll see what those are. I'm not convinced the entire transaction moves to a blockchain. I just don't think it's reasonable, and I don't think it's likely to happen, at least in the next 10, maybe 20 years. Just don't see it. And being on the ground and working on these things firsthand, it's very, very, very difficult. But there will be aspects of this that will have an impact that will make things faster, safer, and forever. Things that we don't have to go back in looking at county records, for example, where we have to go into these large oversized books to pull out records that existed from 200 years ago. What the blockchain keeps is indefinite. It's forever. So it's saved, and we can trace recordings and that sort of thing. So for an example, when we talk about cryptocurrency and real estate transactions, is really kind of the point of the course today, but I wanted to kind of take everyone through some background and how we got here and what is actually happening, what can actually be done today. So today, if someone wants to use cryptocurrency to buy real estate, they either, one way they can do it is they can actually go and cash out their cryptocurrency. So if they own Bitcoin, and let's say they want to buy a home with all of their Bitcoin. So they're buying a home for $300,000 and they have whatever, $1 million in cryptocurrency, and they want to cash out $300,000 to buy that home using cryptocurrency. They can 100% do that. What happens if and when they do that, there's really, unfortunately, at this point, there's really no way to get around a taxable event when these things happen. I'm not an accountant, so obviously talk to your own tax professionals and have your clients talk to their tax professionals. But in a situation like that, it creates a taxable event, and most likely a capital gains type of taxable event. So that's, unfortunately, that's a thing. We've created, but that is one way they can do it. So they can take their cryptocurrency from Bitcoin, convert it into cash, have that cash deposited into their bank account. Once it's in their bank account, they can then send a wire to the title company that they're working with. And that's how typically you would have it done today by probably 99% of the title companies that are out there. Title companies still need cash at the end of the day. So the other way that we've come up with is something called what we've called crypto close. And there's a handful of companies around, title companies around the country that are doing this. This is an alternative to the cashing out and going through that process way to do this. So the way it works for us is you go onto our website and you go to the Get Started button, and we take you through a series of questions. At the end of the day, the numbers that we use are based on the closing disclosure. And let's say that your client needs to bring, in this case, it's a little over $14,000. What we would do is we would send them, basically, we would create a bill and we would send them an invoice with the amount that they owed. So if it's in this case, it was $14,000 or so approximately. We would send them an invoice with a QR code and or a hash of where they're going to send those funds to, so they can take their wallet or where they have their Bitcoin stored. They can use this code that we've created that's unique for them in this transaction. And then that money comes from their Bitcoin account into a account that we work with a company called BitPay. BitPay then does the conversion and wires us the final funds that they would need to close, because we still need cash. But what we do is we save the customer the back and forth of having to do that with their bank. I've talked to our tax accountant on this, and unfortunately, it still does trigger a taxable event. I think that figuring out how to do this with a buyer and seller that's not creating a taxable event, if and when we can do that, this is going to have significantly more impact than it does right now. This does make it easier for a buyer, though, and not having to transfer their money from Bitcoin to their bank to the wire and that sort of thing. They can do this in a much simpler way. And there is additional costs to do it this way, but it is much, much simpler and safer. I talked a little bit about the tax implications. I think the message for clients is that there are options if the title company is set up to do them, where they can use their cryptocurrency if they want towards the purchase of a home, or as a way in lieu of a loan of a home. There are ways to do this. So the answer is, if they ask these questions, again, part of the value that we can bring as an industry is say, yes, we have options for you. We have ways to do this. The other thing that you'd want to keep in mind is if you're going to use cryptocurrency, your client wants to use cryptocurrency as a purchase, and part of a purchase or all of their purchase, disclosing it to the other side of the transaction. So when you're making, and again, this is a broker question, this isn't a Chris question, but I would think that you would want to disclose it to the other side, and whether that incentivizes the seller or not, it may disincentivize them if there's a multiple offer situation. So there's still some hair in doing this, but I think the important thing to know is that it's coming and it's happening. There are companies that are specializing on this in this sort of thing around the country. In New York, for example, they're using breakdowns of what Bitcoin, how many Bitcoin this property were to cost if you wanted to make an offer with Bitcoin or Ethereum or other cryptos. Chicago, same thing. There are companies that are beginning to do this more and more. And I think as the price of specifically Bitcoin goes up, we're going to see this. This was a seller that was listing their property and only wanted to receive the funds in Bitcoin. And so I think if you have a seller that wants to receive the funds in Bitcoin and you have a buyer who's willing to pay in Bitcoin, then we have some really interesting tax questions that begin to happen. So how does that impact? What is the taxable event? Is it a transfer fee? Is it I don't quite know the answer yet. So I think, though, what gets interesting is if it doesn't necessarily create a taxable event to the seller to go in a Bitcoin to Bitcoin type of exchange, that's where things could get really interesting with this. And again, I don't know the answer yet, but that's where things are moving. The other thing I want to point out is, all of you, I'm sure, are aware of what's happening here in Central Ohio with Intel. And so what that means essentially is over the next 10 years, according to the Intel CEO, that could be a $100 billion investment here in Central Ohio with 10,000 Intel workers, and each Intel worker can be another 10,000 or another 10 jobs. So in 10 years, we're talking potentially about 100,000 jobs and a $100 billion investment. These are engineering type jobs. These are technology type jobs. These are folks that probably a decent percentage own cryptocurrency. And so how does that impact the offerings that we're going to, the folks that are moving here, our business, how we offer, being able to work with cryptocurrency? Again, I don't have all of these answers, but I think these are good questions to ask and good things to be thinking about as the market here shifts. The good news is that this pretty much solidifies the demand that we're going to have in the next 10 10 to 20 years. The bad news is obviously we know what it means for the inventory. But how forward facing are we in and around cryptocurrency, digital currency, and the impact that it's going to have with the folks that are going to be moving here? I like this last quote that the CEO had, where he said, this is just one of those catalytic programs that literally is going to take New Albany from a wonderful little town to becoming one of the high-tech mega centers on the planet. So you could think, potentially this becomes a mini Palo Alto in the Midwest over the next 10, 20 years. I don't know, but I think that the ramifications are going to be massive. So, how to start, if you're familiar with what to do, how to do it, what I would tell you is start by just buying some crypto. You can buy some of the speculative stuff like the Dogecoin and things like that. Or you can look at, depending on who you talk to, Doge isn't necessarily that speculative. It has some utility to it. But you could start with buying, $50 worth of Bitcoin, or $100 or whatever. But you can use websites or programs like Coinbase is probably the most popular, the most common. I think they're actually giving away money right now if you sign up and create an account. But it's probably the easiest thing to do is to just get in and own a bit. You don't have to go crazy. Don't put your life savings into it. But what we're going to see more and more, and we're already seeing it from some companies like Tesla, you're going to begin to see institutionalized investors and large companies buying Bitcoin. The reason you're going to see them buying it more and more is because of inflation. It's a hedge against inflation. So what I mean by that, for example, is let's say a company has $1 billion in cash on their books. Right now, that $1 billion in cash value is losing about 7%, maybe more per year because of inflation. So if they take 10% of that and they buy something like Bitcoin, there's a risk that it could go down, of course, but there's also a likelihood that it will go up. And if it goes up, it offsets things like inflation for cash. So I think we're going to see more, not less, of this sort of thing. Doesn't mean they're going to go all in, take all of their cash and do that sort of, but I could see them doing it more and more, and we're already beginning to see that. So those are the things to keep an eye out for and look out for when you're thinking about what's the long-term impact, things like this. But I think the more institutionalized money that's moving into it, the large companies and corporations that carry a lot of cash that are moving into it, those are generally a good sign. So I'm going to stop here shortly and open it up for questions. I know that there's some questions in the chat, and I'm going to share my information. Most of you got it when you signed up, hopefully, but again, I'm happy to make this available, presentation available to those who want it. Just shoot me a note. And I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen now so I can see anyone that has questions. And from here.
Send you guys on my Coinbase link. If you want to get a Coinbase account.
All right. So if you have a question, I'm gonna go ahead and unmute yourself and pop in. And I know that there's some stuff here in the chat.
I have one quick question. You hear about people that are actually mining coin. Like, can anybody, how are they making money by mining coin? Like, can you go out and buy 4 or 5 computers and try to mine coin? How are people making money in that?
So thanks for the question, Mark. It's actually harder now than it's ever been. There's less money in it than there's ever been. And there are generally, it's a fairly energy intensive type of process to do it. So there are custom types of computers that are and processors that are built specifically for mining. So if you have access to cheap energy, then it makes sense. But what happens every time they mint more Bitcoin, the value of what you can make mining goes down. So over the years, they paid miners more because there were less of them. Now there's much more miners available. So the actual, what you actually make in return has significantly gone down. It's not to say that you can't make some money doing it, but there's also then you have to offset the energy costs that it takes to mine.
Right. Okay, thanks.
There's a ton of resources available on YouTube if you want to get into it, and you can actually buy the packages. So you got to, you have to think about the upfront cost to do it, and then you have to think about the ongoing energy costs.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Another question for you. So I understand that at a certain point, they're going to stop making Bitcoin. So how does that impact the value of Bitcoin? What's your explanation for, just like we continue to print money as a government for the last, hundreds and hundreds of years now? Bitcoin is going to have a hard stop at, you probably know that number. Could you elaborate more on that, please?
Yep, it's going to have a hard stop in the next, I think it's within the next 10 years. I can't remember if it's the next 4 years or 5 years. But once it has that hard stop, they've kind of baked in the inability to produce more. So with the hope that it's going to keep demand high. And so, you can think of it this way, like the amount of folks that own cryptocurrency today is basically the equivalent of the amount of people that were on the internet in 1996 or 1997. So it's still super early. I think, and I should have looked at this before this class, but I think the total circulation of Bitcoin is around 2 million. I think there's around 2 million Bitcoin that will be in circulation. So if you are one of 2 million people that own a Bitcoin, like it's just the demand, I think that we're going to see is going to continue to increase as more and more people own cryptocurrency. Like those become some of the calculation.
So what happens if, let's just say Bitcoin is a new way of buying and selling things, but I don't own any and they're all, like all 21 million are owned? So then what happens to like somebody who doesn't have some or only has a little bit?
Well, so it's an exchange, right? So like part of the way it's an exchange. So the value as the value increases or decreases, you're always going to have buyers and sellers. And so you're going to be able to go buy. So the question becomes, do you buy today where it's at, 40,000 a coin, or do you buy in 2 years when it's at potentially, 140,000? Like I don't know. I don't know the answer, but that becomes the calculation, right? So, it's like you may need to maybe you're buying a car, right? And someone says to you, well, we're going to sell you this car. It's $10,000 US, but we're only going to accept Bitcoin. Well, what do? Well, you have to take $10,000 and you have to go buy Bitcoin regardless of where that's priced at. And then you have to transfer that Bitcoin over to that seller. So, it's not like just because you don't own any, you can never own any. Like, and there's always going to be buyers and sellers. It's just going to be about where things are going to be priced at the time.
Well, to add on to that, so would $10,000, let's just say cash money, be like equal to $10,000 in Bitcoin money? So it's like equal value, not, okay.
Correct. Now, there could be fluctuation because Bitcoin's always fluctuating in price, but generally speaking, yes. So you buy $10,000, it could be in 2 hours, it could be $10,054, or it could be $9,897, right? So
it just fluctuates like stock.
Yep, very much. And it's very real time. But you can also, somebody could also send you an invoice. So like what we do with Crypto Close is based on, let's say it's the closing disclosure we're basing it on, and someone needs to bring to the title company, $10,000. We can actually send an invoice for that $10,000. And then they're going to get us that, whatever that Bitcoin is at that time, $10,000 worth. And so we're going to capture it at that moment in time. So you can be invoiced for this exact amount where it doesn't have to be a guessing game, that sort of thing. So I'll look at some of the questions. We would have to know code. Yes, you would have to work with someone. So the question is, would you have to know how to code to use smart contracts? When in the building smart contracts, you would have to work with a developer that knows how to code in that language. That language is called Solidity, I believe is the name of it. And it's not tax-free. Nothing, unfortunately, in the United States of America is tax-free, as we know. So the government will get its hand, so what happens is so if you have an account with, say, Coinbase does, and I don't know if there's a minimum that they have to report, but they do report earnings and they report accounts to the government. So your tax returns have to reflect those holdings in some way, shape, or form. And again, that's a tax accountant question. Did you say property was a hype chaser? Yes, I believe property is a hype chaser. That's my personal opinion, seeing them in the last 6 years. Cryptocurrency is all tax, just paid my capital gains. Yeah, so again, accountant question, but yeah, crypto certified, I don't really know what that means for realtors, but it's $500. It seems, again, like some hype.
Hey, Chris, this is Ronnie Woodrow. Hey, I have a
Hey,
question,
Ronnie.
bud.
Yep.
Hey, are you seeing anyone successfully using NFTs yet on the brokerage side?
No.
I haven't either. I've been trying to do research. I haven't found anyone, successfully mint and then use that in applications of, buying and selling.
Here's the problem. The NFTs in theory is cool, right? And it's cool to think about it in real estate transactions. But the problem with real estate transactions is that if you were actually going to do that, you would have to have the county recorder offices and the county government offices in that NFT, and that's next to impossible. You have all of these counties throughout the country. There's thousands of them, all act as their own independent little fiefdoms, and some are very tech forward, like Franklin County, but then you have other counties that don't even have computers. And so how do you do that? And so I think that that's going to be, until somebody comes along and literally like Google that has those types of records already built out, I think it's going to be very, very difficult to do this in that sort of way where you actually, when you talk about minting it, you need records. You need county recognized records to do this sort of thing. And it's really, really, really difficult.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, I've been trying to do research for about a year when NFTs really started to get popular, and I cannot find anyone successfully implementing NFTs yet.
No, it's super early. And again, there's a lot of hype. I wouldn't get too far down the path. I would wait and let it explode and then see what comes out the other side. I think that's the game at this point. Now, again, I'm wrong. I can easily be wrong. Don't take any of this as any kind of financial advice, but that's just more of a personal opinion.
Yeah, and I also add this to the group, guys. I mean, I've known Chris for a long time, and Chris was talking about blockchain technology. This is like 6-8 years ago before anyone even knew about it. So I know if anyone knows what they're talking about, Chris definitely does. So appreciate this webinar today, Chris.
Thanks for the plug, Ronnie. I'll send you some Bitcoin a little bit later too.
Yeah, you know what? Give me some of the Ethereum. I'm gonna work on the NFTs.
All right, sounds good.
Hey, Chris. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
This is Scott Nobbit. We're in a room under Mark Mess. There's a group of us EXP agents that are listening to this. This is very, informative to all of us. It seems to me, this is my first real exposure. Seems to me that the devil's in the details, in the sense that, somebody who paid $5 for Bitcoin that wants to sell, they want somebody to buy their house for $29 million. That seems like that could be an incredibly inflated price for something that, in cash might only spend $1 million for, because somebody who paid $5 several years ago now has, per your projections of value and all that kind of thing. And then even things like contracts, our Columbus Board of Realtors would say, you've got to stay draw within the lines, color within the lines of our contracts and legal, the legal advice we have from Columbus Board of Realtors and things of that nature. So it just seems like, it could become the Wild West unless there's certain restrictions or, people that are in, government positions, tax, just like you mentioned with the whole taxable gains, capital gains, you always got to kind of operate within what is legal and within our board of builders, I think is real crucial.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you're right. I think, there, again, this is, the idea of it is simple. The execution of it, as we all know, is incredibly, incredibly complex. So, and I think that I think there will be opportunities to improve the way we do things for the best interest of the consumer. And that's always how I try to look at this stuff, is what is in the best interest of the consumer? How do we create a better consumer experience as an industry? And I think hopefully that's all of us collectively, thinking in that manner. Because also at the end of the day, like that's what we're all competing against. The consumer has more and more options, especially with companies like Open Door and some of these other folks that are doing everything from start to finish. They have more and more options that are consumer focused. So as an industry, we all have a vested interest in creating a better consumer experience. And that's really the lens that I try to look at all this stuff through.
Yeah, I'm going to bring this to reality. And that is that I have a friend, I'm not going to mention their name, obviously, but what was the price of Bitcoin just a couple months ago? I know it's 42,000 a share now. It was like 100. What was it?
I think it got up to close to, I think it up to around 70.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
so
just
around
over.
70. He did a cash out refi on his house for 250,000, and he bought it all with Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And now it's 42,000.
Yeah.
So he's lost that kind of equity. Is he selling? No, he's just going to hold it because he believes it's going to go up and up and up. But and the other point I was going to make was you talked about the contracts, how maybe you could contract be leveraged possibly with maybe. I thought that was interesting because that almost immediately when the contract gets put into executed, funds will immediately transfer, right? I mean, that's potentially what could happen with that type of contract.
Yeah, it's whatever you would code and design for. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a powerful contract. You know what I mean? And not that our contracts aren't powerful already, but a lot of people do different things within those contracts prior to making moves. You know what I mean? So it's a powerful tool that you could use as a seller in requesting certain things in order to go into contract with the right buyer,
There's a lot of potential efficiencies. There's also a lot of potential safety that comes with things like that, because you're now moving money, connecting accounts before things like wire fraud can happen. So, there are technology and opportunities with this stuff that we can't just, I think, look past because it it's complicated. But yeah, I agree. I think having the ability to make these executable contracts is really powerful and efficient, and it create again about creating a better consumer experience.
And you may be able to share with us how people right now currently are trading services for Bitcoin. Now, I don't know what the legality of that is. You can pay a contractor in Bitcoin if he has a Coinbase account.
I'm sorry,
Correct.
Say that again. I'm sorry, I missed that.
So if a contractor wants to get paid in Bitcoin, you could potentially pay that contractor in Bitcoin the way things are right now. People are trading Bitcoin to Bitcoin accounts currently, not in real estate.
Correct. Yes, it's called a wallet. So Coinbase is an example of one, but there are a lot of examples of them. And if you have, you have a job, it's $500 and you have $1,000 in your Coinbase wallet, you could have that person send you an invoice using Coinbase or whatever their wallet is for $500, and you could have that come right out of your account. Anyone else?
Very helpful.
Can we get a copy?
Yeah, I'll just go ahead and send a copy around to everyone.
Thank you.
Mhm. Couple other questions. We do not use cryptocurrency. We're not available in throughout the US, but we could make it available to companies that needed to use it. We're licensed in 6 states. I think there was something in here about cold wallets and hot wallets. That is a thing. Basically, the difference between a hot wallet and a cold wallet is a hot wallet is like a Coinbase wallet where you actually can access cryptocurrency digitally in a live version. A cold wallet would be like, let's say you have $5 million worth of Bitcoin and you have a unique code specifically for that account, that if someone were to get access to that code, and it's like 32 characters long, hashed, it's a very secure code, but if somebody had that physical code, they could access that Bitcoin. So what people will do is they'll actually delete any record of it from their computer or anything connected to the internet, and they'll print out what that code is, and they'll physically take it out of their home and like put it in a bank deposit box or something that they only have access to away and outside of their home, outside of their computer. It's nothing connected to the internet. That's an example of cold storage. Well, thank you all. Appreciate your time today. I'm going to go ahead and sign off unless there's anything else. And like I said, I'll go ahead and get that out to everyone, and we'll get those seed certificates out here. Give us a couple days on those. So thanks so much, and appreciate all of you jumping on.
Thank you. And Chris, will we get the link to rewatch this?
Yeah, I'll post it. I'll put it up on our CE page, and give me to the end of the week on that, and I'll get that up there.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. I definitely want to watch it a few times. There's a lot to take in. Thank you.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.